Okay, for today, you definitely want to have your graphing calculator handy because these are sequences that are pretty challenging. Make sure you're in sequence mode on your calculator and then hit the y equals button and it brings up that little list of 3 things for the u. They want to know the n min. They want to know u parentheses n, which is u sub n. And then they want to know u n min. Well, if you've already defined n min as equal to like 1, this means like u sub 1. Of course they want to know what u sub 1 is then. All right, so here's a typical question. See if you can put this in your calculator right. What if I start with u sub 1 is 20 and u sub n is equal to u sub n minus 1. And by the way, that's not a capital U. I've made it a little too big. It's a lowercase u. It's right above the 7 on your calculator. And then I do this. Can you put that in your calculator? If you can't, you are tragically behind. That's got to be the easy part now. All right, I'm going to give you a partner to compare calculators with. And what I want you to do that, the way that really works the best, is to hold the calculators up side by side so you can see their y equals screen and they can see your y equals screen. Not the table, the y equals screen, okay? And you got to see if they've got the same exact thing as you, okay? But to see if you are on the right track, why don't everybody right now see what u sub 4 is on your calculator, and let's see if we all get the same thing. And if you don't get the same thing, it'll be because one of you has different numbers on your y equals screen. I can tell you this, it starts with 20, and then it's going up because I'm multiplying by something bigger than 1. So hopefully you have a number bigger than 20 for u sub 4. All right? Compare your values of u sub 4, and if they're different, go compare your y equals screens. I'm going to pause while you do that. All right, Mr. GL in the back of the room, what did you put on your n min line?
For the n min, I put 1.
Excellent. And then for the u sub n line? I'm guessing u sub n minus 1 to start with, right?
Yep.
And then?
1 plus.
Awesome. You don't need the 0 in front of the decimal, but it's okay if you want that. And then the last thing is u n min, which really means u sub 1 in this case, because you just said n min is 1, so this means u sub 1, which is what? 20. All right, and then you'd be able to do this on the table, or just even out on the blank home screen, you could type u sub 4. What did you get for u sub 4? 23 point what? 152. So I'll just round to 23.15. How many of you would have had an answer that would have rounded to that? Okay, good. All right. Now I'm going to give you a real world problem without any coaching, and let's see if you can put it in the calculator right. You work at the bank, and this lady walks in with $10,000. She just made that at her store, and you know, she's like a shoe sales store, so she brings in her cash. She wants to put it in the bank, so you help her to start a savings account. And now this is the important part, that you don't screw this part up. You put the 10 grand in, and all your bank can offer for interest, because you're like a normal bank, is 0.15% interest. Some people didn't just hear me and they think I said 15% interest. I did not. No bank ever has paid 15% interest. I said 0.15%. Okay, put that in the calculator correctly and figure out how much she has after 5 years. Notice I didn't say whether you should start with u sub 0 or u sub 1. I didn't tell you what to put in the calculator. You have to be able to figure out all those things. It's a lot like what you just did, but it's different. All right. The key, if you don't get the same answer as the other person, is compare y equals screens, especially about the interest. Pause, we give that a try. Okay, even though you have the right to start with u sub 1, I would strongly recommend starting with u sub 0, or you're likely to screw it up. Then, it's always this. Remember me saying it's always this? It is always that. Then, this next part isn't always, but it's usually 1 plus or 1 minus something. 1 plus implies what? Starts with a G. Growth. The 1 minus would imply decay. All right, good. So then, here's the classic mistake, of course. No, that would mean you gave them 15% interest. No bank does that. I wish they did. But you're supposed to give them 0.15. I know this feels weird, but you always have to move the decimal 2 spots. Think about this example, 0.25. What percent would that be? 25%. How far did the decimal move? 2 spots. So you got to move the decimal 2 spots. 0.0015. If you didn't do that right, smack yourself on the wrist so you don't do it again. Be careful with moving that decimal 2 spots. Okay, then somebody did it right, I'm sure. What was u sub 5 if you did it right? What did you say, sir? Did you have that way or not?
Yeah, I got it.
What'd you get? 10,000 something.
75.2.
Do you get that this person made about $75 in interest over 5 years? That's really pretty bad. Let's see what they could have done if they would have deposited it at 3.2% interest. I want a new number assuming 3.2% interest. That's what you can get at one of the top paying online banks. Question? Yes, ma'am. What are you asking? Okay, I could believe that this decimal could have been different based on one of you being on the number, like you arrow down through your chart and get on top of the number. Did you try that? Did you start? Ah, there's the problem. Go with u sub 0. You got to have your n min be 0 on these real world problems. Otherwise, you only did 4 years. U sub 5 is not the same if you start with u sub 0 or if you start with u sub 1. Okay, now you're changing it though to be 3.2%. It's going to be a lot more than 75 bucks of interest. Common mistake time. Do you get some kids are going to put that? And that would be 32% interest, which would be amazing and not going to happen. 0.032, do you just kind of guess? No. You take your number and you move the decimal 2 places. Okay, it was 3.2, so I move it over 2 places. That's what it should have been. New amount. Or is it 10,000 or is it actually up to 11,000? 11,000 what? 765? I'm just trying to hear you. Just 505? I'm going to let it be that. I'm just going to round it and say it's about that. So, do you get how much money the difference is there? That's like, well, the other one was only like 80 bucks or 70 something. So, this is at least $1,600 more. That's a lot of bananas. You know? $1,600 is 16 $100 bills. That's a lot of dough. Some of you guys are sitting right now with $10,000 in your checking account and you're getting 0.15% interest. And I've encouraged you to think about that. I'm not saying you should switch to an online, but I'd talk to mom and dad about it. Maybe you should. Maybe you got enough in there that, you know, like if you're going to save for the next 5 years, maybe it's going to add up a lot more. Okay. All right. But you do want to make sure, in my opinion, that you go with something that's FDIC insured. Okay, because sometimes you can get even higher interest rates, but it's not insured. That means it's not really completely safe. If it's FDIC insured, it's backed up by the government. And the only way if that fails, if the government doesn't pay you back, that means our government is having big trouble financially. And that means all bets are off. That means we're like Venezuela or something where they're in big trouble. Then the banks aren't going to be safe anymore. All right. So how could it get even more complicated? Let's say that we go back in time, do the same exact problem, except I say it was in 2016 that she gave you $10,000. And we'll keep that same 3.2% interest just to make you not have to change much. But now my question is, when will she hit, and that means a year, when will she hit 1,200 bucks? Yep. $1,200. We know she already had 1,100 after like 5 years, so I should say of interest. Sorry about that. Because obviously you said 10,000 right off the bat. So when would they hit $1,200 in interest? All right. I think some of you are going to have done this smarter than others. Who went back to their calculator and changed their N-min to be 2016? Raise your hand if you did it that way. That's the easy way to do it. I strongly recommend that. Do that. If you didn't change your N-min, change your N-min to 2016. But then, the only bad part about that is, when you look on your chart, you got to get your calculator to get all the way to the 2016 line of your table. So then you got to go to table settings. So let me finish exactly what you should have in your calculator. You'd have that, you'd have this. And then you'd have this. And I personally would do this date of 2016 because then it'll be easier to look on your chart and find out exactly when 1,200 matches up with a year. And the year over here, how do you get like to go way down here? Do you seriously want to arrow down 2,000 times? Probably not. It's called table settings. I'll show you that on my calculator. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so first check if your y equals screen looks like mine. 2016, u sub n minus 1, 1 plus 0.032, starting with $10,000. Then I'm going to go to my table settings. That's right here above this red key. See? Right above where it says window. I want to start with 2016. Now when I go to my table, it won't just run forever. It'll jump right to that. And then when did I hit 1,200? Well, this is actually trickier than you'd think. It depends on whether this is 2020 at the end of the year. Sorry, wait a minute. It's in the year 2022 that it finally went over. Oh, wait, I wanted 1,200 in it. My bad. 1,200 in interest is okay, 1,200, and that's right about in there. Or was it back here? Well, you'd say it was. Could it be in 2019? Well, it depends. If these are at the beginning of 2019, you know what I mean? That balance right here, is that number 10991? Is that at the beginning of the year 2019 or the end of the year 2019? That's the question. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so what I would assume is that these are as of the beginning of the year, and therefore it isn't until the beginning of this year it hit 1,200 in interest. So it would have happened sometime in 2019. And I know that's a little bit frustrating, but it happened sometime in 2019. If you said 2020, actually you were a little more than the 1,200. And if you clarified that in your answer, I'd probably take it as long as if you had said 2020, as long as you said it actually happened sometime before 2020, because by 2020 it's at more than enough. All right, so, all right, I know it's a little vague, but we don't have a way in this of knowing whether our payment or whether our years are at January 1st or whether our years are at December 31st. Okay. All right, good enough on that. I'm going to give you another one that's going to be mildly annoying because it's not how we usually do it. What's the next number? He said 18 or 10. What do you mean? It's timesing by 3, so obviously it's 18. Why could it also be 10? All right. What if I gave you this one and I said this one was 14? Wouldn't that be like a tiebreaker to be able to tell you whether it had been arithmetic or geometric? Do you get what I'm saying? All right, I'm going to give you one like that. And here's my question about it. What is, I'm going to write a bunch of things and some of them don't exist and some of them do. Common ratio, growth rate, common difference, and that's enough. Give me all of those that you can and fill in what the blank is. Pause for a second. Well, you answer that one. All right, discuss it with the person that I paired you with for today. See if you guys get the same thing. All right, so what did you say? What do you think this number was? I agree, it's 9. And does that mean we have a common ratio or a common difference? Common difference. We don't have one of those. Some of you are like, yeah, you do. You just divide these two. No. When you divide those two, you get 2. When you divide these two, you're supposed to get the same thing, and they should be in common, and you don't. So it's not a common ratio. It's a common difference of what? 3. And then the growth rate doesn't exist. You only have growth rates if you are multiplying by something. Okay. All right. Next one. Might also be mildly annoying. That versus that. The red one and the black one of them is arithmetic, one of them is geometric. Don't say it. Figure it out. Which one do you think is which? Arithmetic versus geometric. So I'm going to ask you this way. Which one is arithmetic? And then tell the kid next to you what you think. Arithmetic. All right, yeah, the arithmetic is this one. Because it's going up the same amount each time. Do you get this one? It doesn't go up much at all, but then all of a sudden by the end it's going up a lot. So it's changing how much it goes up, and that's because it's multiplying by something. That red one is geometric. All right. So now I'm going to give you another one. Can you tell right away, arithmetic or geometric? Geometric. Okay. What if I say and I say $8, $16, 32, 64, and this is going to be n. Write an equation for that. Pausing. All right. Did you figure out that u sub 1 was 8, u sub 2 was 16, u sub 3 was 32, and u sub 4 was 64? Is that what you got out of that? That's what was happening. And if you make that list for yourself, it's a lot easier to go, oh, is this doubling each time? That's no big deal. It's just one of those. And I know what it started with was that one. So u sub 1 is, do I have to pick u sub 1? Yeah, because it says it's sub 1. You don't have a choice on this one. The n is 1, and that's where n goes. So you had to say u sub 1 was 8. You could not pick it to be u sub 0. It's one of the few times you can't pick that. Then u sub n equals u sub n minus 1 times 1 plus 1. What are you doing, Mr. Server? Can't you just times by 2? Yeah, but why did I write it as 1 plus 1? Because then when I ask you what the growth rate is, you won't say 2 or 200%, because this wasn't a growth rate of 200%. It had a common ratio of 2, but a growth rate of not 1, not 10, 100%. That makes sense to you? I could have put a 2 here, but it would have misled me into thinking that the common ratio is 2. It would have misled me into saying that the growth rate was 2 or 20 or something like that, but it's actually 100% growth rate. And then the final, to put this in the calculator, you'd have to tell it, I was writing a domain. N has to be greater than or equal to 2. Did any of you actually write that? Do write it right now, just so you don't forget it on the test. I don't know how tough my colleagues are going to be, but I'm going to follow them. If they all mark that as 5% off, then I will too. Try to remember to put that little domain in there. Okay, that's saying that this formula only works for the second term. It will not predict the first term. It won't predict what number to start with. It won't tell you u sub 1. It'll tell you u sub 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but yes.
So if it's u sub 0, would you say?
Yeah, so if this had been a 0, which it couldn't be because of that, but if it had been a 0, then this would have been a 1. Or like that other problem where we started in 2018 or something, or 2016. If you call this a starting at 2016, which is totally okay for a problem like that, then n would be greater than or equal to 2017. Okay. All right, covering a lot of stuff. Let's say gas right now is at $2.80 a gallon. Nobody knows whether it's going to go up or down. A lot of presidents have predicted, I'm going to make the gas price go up or down. Actually, nobody says that. They say, I'm going to make gas price go down, or based on these policies I'm going to enact. But you just never know. And countries can influence it. Like, our gas price would go down a few cents tomorrow. All it would have to happen is OPEC. Have you heard of that before? Oil producing companies get together and they have this little group and they say how many oil barrels they're going to produce. If one of the major players like Saudi Arabia said, we're going to produce twice as much oil next year as we did this year, what do you think would happen to the price? It'll go down, because if they put more oil on the market, it's going to get cheaper. But what they did, and they actually did that on purpose, they drove the price of oil way down not too long ago. Do you know why they would want to do that? They sell oil. Why would they want the price of oil to go down? True, you'll sell more of it. That's not it. They wanted the price of oil to go down because it was bothering them that a lot of new companies in the United States had just opened up, new oil companies. They had a lot of debt, and they were doing fracking. Have you heard of fracking? Different kind of oil production than they do in Saudi Arabia. Fracking all of a sudden meant that North Dakota had a ton of oil that they could sell, and all of a sudden we, the United States, used to be one of the biggest importers of oil. Now, as the United States, we export oil. We have so much we can't even use it all. We sell it to other countries. Why? Because of North Dakota and because of fracking. There's problems with fracking too, I know, but in case anybody's listening to this going, oh my gosh, fracking is terrible. There's problems with fracking, but the fracking caused us to be a net oil exporter, and Saudi Arabia was getting ticked because they were like, oh great, so now all of a sudden there's more people making oil. How about if we put those companies out of business? How can you put new oil companies out of business? If the price of oil drops a lot, then when they're getting new barrels of oil, they're not selling them for as much. So Saudi Arabia decided, we're going to make the price of oil drop. So let's say that the new price of oil, after they start saying, we're going to pump a ton of oil next year, and the price drops down to $2.10 a share. My question is, what percent decrease was that? A lot of people are going to do this wrong. Be very careful. What percent decrease was that? This is the original number. That's the new number. Obviously, it went down. What percent decrease is that? Okay, so I could see a kid going like this. Well, Mr. Server always said that in the first two terms, you take the second one, divide by the first one. And they're not completely wrong, but if you just do that, you might have an issue. So I'm going to take 210 and divide it by 280, and I get 0.75. If you were to write out the whole equation, I hope you would catch your mistake. U sub 0, it's a real world problem, so I'm going to say U sub 0 is 280. U sub n equals U sub n minus 1. Hold on, I'm having some issues here. And I could put 0.75 there, but what did I train you to put there? Yes? 1 plus or minus something. To get to 0.75, it would have to be 1 minus what? Now from me writing that, and I'll ask the question again, what percent decrease was that? If you said 75%, you are wrong, and most of you were wrong, I know, because I looked at your papers. So what was the right answer? 25% decrease. See why I suggest you always write this as a 1 plus or minus something? And 0.75, you can't get that with 1 plus something, right? So it has to be 1 minus. All right. Let's do that one more time, except see if you can do it, get it right without any help from me. What's something that goes up in cost, typically? Okay, so imagine you bought some Bitcoin last year. It was kind of in a slump at the end of last year, but it's gone up a little bit since then. Let's say that for 1 Bitcoin, you bought it for $3,000. And let's say it's currently at $3,620. that means you can sell your Bitcoin to somebody else. It's kind of a strange idea, this Bitcoin. It's just a virtual currency. It's kind of like a dollar bill, except it's all digital. And what it's worth is only what somebody will pay you for it. What percent? Well, I hope you can tell it's an increase. What percent increase is that? Always start by dividing these two, and then just try to interpret your answer. So if I got 3620 divided by 3,000, I got 1.20666. If you were to write out your whole thing, it would go like this. One plus 0.2, I'm going to round it, that's about a 21% increase. About a 21% increase, or a 20.6% increase. Basically, think of it this way. It's 1 plus whatever the decimal is. If it's bigger than 1, it's always pretty easy. You can see, oh, it's whatever that is, percent increase. Move the decimal over 2 spots, you get 20.7 if you want to round it, percent increase. Okay, now one more real world question. When you buy a car, does it go up or down in value? Down. There's rare exceptions, of course. You buy some kind of classic car and it's like becomes in demand. It's rare, but sometimes cars will go up. But most cars go down. Let's say you buy a car for 20 grand and it loses 10% of its value each year. How much is it worth 4 years later? A $20,000 car, that is a very realistic number, decreases by 10% per year. It loses 10% of its value. 4 years, did I say 4 years later? 4 years later, what's it worth? That is a very realistic scenario. Some people say that they lose 20%, like very early, like in a year or two. It might not lose 10% every year, but it definitely goes down something every year. Did you realize there was a real world problem and put u sub 0 equals? That was smart. And then u sub n minus 1, and then 1 minus 0.10. 0.1 is the same as 0.10. How many of you got that far? All right. Then you use your calculator. Table would work. Or if your table's messed up, always go to the table settings. And if you get your calculator stuck running and it's like running, and it can't think, hit the on button to break that. Okay. And then go to your table settings and change it to start at 0. That happens to people all the time. Or you could just go to the main screen and type u parenthesis 4, u sub 4. What did you get for u sub 4, sir? 13,122? Let me just ask you this. In round numbers, how much do they lose on their car? 7-ish thousand. That's a lot of money. I'm telling you, every single car that's in the parking lot today is doing that. Not maybe 10%, maybe it's only like 6%. Depends on the kind of car, too. But the cars are just going down slowly in value. If you wait like 10 years, a lot of the cars in the parking lot are just going to literally be worth nothing. Because they'll have been driven so many miles that they barely work anymore and they're worth almost nothing. They'll usually give you like $100 or something for a car that you just like roll in, just because of the metal can be recycled. Sometimes you can get something for that, even if the car doesn't work anymore. But usually they don't give you much even for that, because they also have expenses like for recycling the car, because not every part of the metal is worth something. A lot of it, some dangerous stuff in there like oil, gas. Okay, I've covered a lot of things, but not everything. So your job, in case you're new to me, you need to know this. Tonight's homework, I don't cut anything out of the reviews, so it's the longest night of homework, but then it'll be followed by the shortest night of homework tomorrow after your test. But I assign the whole review, and I collect it by having you drop it in the Dropbox, and it will be graded for sure by me tomorrow. So do a quality job on it. I strongly recommend doing all of it because it'll cost you points in the 10% category for not doing your homework. And if you don't do some of them, you'll probably get stumped by those same questions on the test tomorrow. The test is tomorrow. Okay? All right, so step up tonight. And if you need to, you can go back and watch old videos from last week or the week before that at servervideo.com. This video, of course, you just lived through it. Some people like to watch them again. Okay. Any last questions? All right, this is not a super easy test to start the year with. It's not impossible, but it's not super easy. So please do your work. I want to see some good scores. That's all I got for you for today.